You are listening to the Truth to Live By podcast, a ministry of Windward Baptist Church. To learn more about our church, you can check out our website at windwardbaptist.org.
Verse 1. Men, brethren, and fathers, hear ye my defense, which I make now unto you. So at the end of chapter 21, the riot that breaks out and all what had happened, Paul is going to make a defense. And he's glad to do it. He is happy to be able to speak to the Jews. I mean, he's thinking that, oh, now, finally, after all of these months of traveling, I'm in Jerusalem. And yeah, the riot, that wasn't too fun, getting beat up and all that. But I get to speak to the Jews. I get to speak to my people. I get to pour out my heart. And he really poured out his heart. And he is going to give a defense. Now, this word defense is from the Greek word apologia, which means a verbal defense, a reasoned statement or argument. If you ever heard of those that are apologists, they're not trying to apologize, but they're making a defense. That's what the apologists would do. And what they would do initially, you had a lot of technology, or maybe not a lot of technology, but you had those that were supposedly enlightened, and they had the understanding of the science and philosophies and all of this. So they kind of made it out to be that if you weren't all that smart, then you just kind of became a Christian. But if you were educated, you knew that it was all about science and philosophy and all these humanistic ways of thinking. Now, the Bible doesn't contradict science, but the Bible does contradict evolution. In fact, evolution contradicts science. Evolution is not really science, because science has to be repeatable, testable, and observable. But anyway, so in that thought, because it was seen as Christians not having too great of answers, the apologists came on the scenes, and they had answers. They were able to give answers to where the philosophers fell short. In fact, Christianity takes up where philosophy ends. Philosophy can only take you so far. And even science and the way the science is taught, I mean, true science goes along with the Bible, but still, it only goes so far. You need the Word of God. Science is only going to take you so far. In fact, even evolution, they can only come up with answers from when there's already a living organism. And the origin of the species teaches how it mutates up. But how did that begin? How did life start from nothing? They don't have answers for that. And the best that they got is the Big Bang. I mean, they just throw everything into that. And there's still a lot of questions about that. So there's a lot of questions in evolution. There's a lot of questions in philosophy. And Christianity takes up where there is no more answers that the world has. So the apologists would make a defense for the truth. And there are some tremendous apologists that are in our day that do a good job in defending the faith. They go to college campuses and they have debates with atheists, evolutionists, and that. So that's where you get that word, apologia. This is the first of 5 defenses that Paul is going to make. He's going to be giving his testimony over and over again. So the defense that he makes, and you think, man, I would like to be an apologist. There's a lot to study, a lot you got to know to be able to answer questions, to be able to refute the arguments that are presented before you. But really, Paul doesn't do that as his defense. He has a method that he sticks to, and he does it, and he uses it over and over and over again. So Paul, as an apologist, used one primary tool that we can all use. We can all be apologists. You know what that tool is? His testimony. You can't argue with the testimony. I mean, you can, but it doesn't make sense. Because when he testifies, he's telling them what happened to him. And that's what we all as believers need to familiarize ourselves with our testimony to where we can present it in an organized manner. And also to be able to give a condensed version of it at times. Sometimes you might not have that time. But we need to be very familiar with our testimony. If you have difficulty putting together your testimony, or you're not even sure, if you have a testimony, that's a good indication that you've never gotten saved. Because everyone who's gotten saved has a testimony. Now, we use the word testimony loosely sometimes. We're just talking about giving a praise report, basically. But when I'm talking about a testimony, I'm talking about someone who was lost and they got saved. How their life was, how they got saved, and how their life is now. That is a testimony. That's what I'm talking about. So when Paul gives his testimony, he's telling them what happened to him. And that's what this chapter is about. He's just going to tell them basically what happened to him. That's it. You can't argue with the testimony. You can't say, no, that didn't happen. This is the experience, what the person experienced. And that's what Paul's what he's going to do. When you're going witnessing or when you're witnessing to someone, use that tool. You can tell them, this is how my life was. And this is what happened to me. I got saved. And this is how my life is now. That's a testimony. I mean, we see that in the Bible. The woman at the well. She just met Jesus Christ. She didn't know much of the Old Testament scriptures. She didn't have that much knowledge. All she knew was that she met Jesus Christ. And she went into the city. And the Bible says that she told the whole city. She says, come see a man which told me all things whichever I did. Is not this the Christ? Because she told him that when she was talking with Jesus, he knew already when he asked her the question, go call your husband, that she didn't have a husband. She was living with someone who wasn't her husband, and she's had many husbands before and been divorced many times, and she was a very immoral woman. He knew all that about her. So she thought, wow, hey, are you a prophet? She met the Messiah. And so when she got converted, she told the people of her city, and they came out, and that whole city was converted when they met Jesus, who was introduced to Jesus by this woman who just said, come see a man, which told me all things whichever I did. How about the blind man, blind Bartimaeus? And they said, hey, tell us about this person. I mean, he's a sinner. Did you not know that? He says, I don't know much about him, if he's a sinner or not, or all the details of his life. But one thing I do know, I was blind. Now I see. That I know. And that's an illustration of what happened to us. We were blind, we were lost, we got saved, and now we see. Now we have truth. Our heart is changed. We're not perfect, we're not sinless, but we sin less because we're growing closer to Christ. And he's conforming us into his image. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to give his testimony. And he's going to do this 5 times, first time of the 5. And he's real slick in how he does it. He knows who he's talking to. He's talking to Jews. He's a Jew. So he's going to speak their language, literally. Verse 2. And when they heard that he spake in the Hebrew tongue to them, they kept the more silence, and he saith. So now he's talking to them in their language. He was talking to the Roman guard in his language. He spoke several languages. So now he's speaking to them in Hebrew. So when he's starting to speak in Hebrew, they're thinking, oh, wow, speaks our language. And that's important. When we talk to someone, we got to speak their language. I'm not talking about using profanity. But, like you're witnessing to someone, you want to be able to relate to them. You want to be able to, as much as possible, get them to accept who you are, that you are someone that's just like them in a sense. So he's a Jew. He's speaking to them in Hebrew. And he's going to make reference to that also in some other ways. So when they heard that, they quieted down. And he is going to have some moments to where he's able to just speak to them. Verse 3. So now he's going to tell them about himself. I am verily a man which am a Jew, born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia. So he was a Greek-speaking Jew. He was like the ones that we read about in the Jerusalem church, how you had the Hebrew-speaking Jews and you had the Greek-speaking Jews. Well, he was one that was outside of the land. He was in Tarsus. And so he's telling them, I didn't grow up in Jerusalem, I'm not from here, but I'm a Greek-speaking Jew from Tarsus. He's telling them his background. Yet he was brought up in the city. So some people believe that Apostle Paul is from a wealthy Jewish family. We don't know all the details, but we know as he's going to make reference later on, he's going to tell them that when he's going to let them know he's a Roman citizen, then the captain is going to say, what do you mean? He's testing him out. Are you serious? You're a Roman? He says, and he's going to say, I purchased my Roman citizenship and it's cost a lot of money. Well, Paul says, well, I am freeborn. I was born a Roman citizen, which means his father or grandfather, someone in the past, his father or grandfather was given Roman citizenship. And a lot of times if someone did something special for the Romans, they did something, there was someone that was very prominent, maybe very wealthy or whatever the case is, and so they granted them Roman citizenship. And that's what happened, either his father or his grandfather. So he inherited that. He's born a Roman citizen, which was an important thing, as we'll see in this chapter. So his father may have been very rich, wealthy, affluent. Whatever the case is, he's from Tarsus, sends his son to be tutored under the famous Rabbi Gamaliel in Jerusalem. So he's born over here, but he grows up in Jerusalem. So what he's saying is, I'm a Greek-speaking Jew. You know, I'm with the Greek-speaking Jews, but I'm also with the Hebrew-speaking Jews because I grew up in Jerusalem. So you say he can relate to both sides, which is a great opportunity for him to be able to win the hearts of both of the Greek-speaking Jews and the Hebrew-speaking Jews, where sometimes there was division among them. We've seen that in the church of Jerusalem. So he's telling them his background. I was brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel. Now, Gamaliel was one of the most famous rabbis. He was a tremendous teacher. He was highly respected. And in Gamaliel's writings, he talks of Apostle Paul. He said the only thing about Apostle Paul, the only negative thing about him was I could never get him enough reading material, that he just would read everything. And he got to where he knew everything or thought he knew everything. But he was, Gamaliel's star student, star pupil. He was going to be the next Gamaliel, the next respected rabbi. But then he converted to Christianity. So he's telling them, hey, I was taught from Gamaliel. He's giving them his credentials. I know how you think. I was where you are now. And so he's trying to relate to them. So they're listening. They're thinking, wow, that's interesting. Man, he grew up out there, out of the city, as a Greek-speaking Jew, came to Jerusalem and was taught by Gamaliel. So they're thinking about, wow, this guy has some credentials. Now, he knows his credentials aren't important as far as, we don't have to have degrees and all of these accolades to our name to be able to be a witness. But to the Jews, it's important, so he presents that. Because he's going to say all the things that I've done, he says, it is but dung. He said, I count it but all lost, that it's dung compared to Jesus Christ and his ministry that Jesus gave to him. So he says, I am verily a man, verse 3, born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, yet brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, and taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the fathers, and was zealous toward God, as ye are all this day. He said, I was very zealous for what I believed. And he's trying to relate to them, and he's saying basically, I understand how you think. You guys are trying to kill me. You guys are beating me up. You guys all bruised up, all banged up. He was saying, you guys are all beating me up, but hey, I know why you did it, because I did the same thing. He's going to tell them that, you remember Stephen? Stephen was martyred because Apostle Paul consented unto Stephen's death. And he held the cloaks of the people that threw the first stones, because he was too high a rank to be able to get his hands dirty to throw the stones at Stephen. But he was the one that consented to his death. So Stephen's death was because of Apostle Paul, even though he didn't actually throw the stone. He's telling them, I did the same thing. Man, I was going to hunt them down. I got permission from the chief priest. He says, you guys know that. I got permission from you guys to go down and to hunt down the Christians in Damascus to bring them back bound to Jerusalem. It wasn't enough when the persecution went out because of Paul, who was called Saul of Tarsus back then. He said, it wasn't enough that I persecuted them. When they left, I chased them. And he's telling what happened on his way to Damascus. He says, I know, he's trying to relate to them. He's trying to let them know that I can see things from your perspective. And it's good for us to always do that. When we're talking to people, we got to understand that they're lost. The reason why lost people do the things that they do is because they're lost. Does it make any sense for us as believers to try to convince them that what they're doing is wrong? No, we need to convince them that they need Jesus Christ. Sin has separated them from God. But to argue with them about the specific sins that they're involved with doesn't make any sense. We got to remember that we were that way. So he identifies with them that he says, I was just like you. And we got to remember that we were just like how the lost people are now. And we want to have compassion for them. We don't want to think of ourselves more highly than we ought to think. The only difference between us and them is the fact that we know Jesus Christ. And so we need to introduce Jesus to them, and we need to have compassion. And that's how Paul was. I mean, he just got beat up by them, but he's saying, hey, I understand. I did the same thing before. I understand how you think. I understand why you're doing it. I was very zealous also. Paul felt like he was serving God by persecuting the Christians, just like how those people feel. They didn't mind if a Gentile converted to Judaism. They're like, oh yeah, he wants to get his heart right, convert to. And a Gentile could convert to Judaism. But what Paul was teaching, and this went before the Jerusalem Council, if you remember that, does a Gentile have to become a Jew to become a Christian? Or does a Gentile just become a Christian? That was the argument at the Jerusalem Council. And it was determined by the Jerusalem Council, and James being the leader, giving the verdict that no, a Gentile does not have to become a Jew first and be circumcised and go through all that. He just believes on the Lord and gets saved. And we as Jews got to get converted the same way as the Gentiles. In fact, we got to do it their way. We got to get saved like they get saved. They don't got to get saved like how we did, Jew first, then saved, because they're already Jews. This was a, crossing over from the old covenant to the new covenant. So when they're thinking, wait a minute, that's kind of putting the Jews and the Gentiles on the same level. They were not willing to accept that. It made them mad. See how what I did, that's how mad they were. So he says the word. He was waiting to say that too. You notice how he didn't say it before? That Ananias said, I'm to be a witness to all men, Gentiles. Verse 22, and they gave him audience unto this word, and then lifted up their voices and said, away with such a fellow from the earth, for it is not fit that he should live. They said, kill him. And as they cried out and cast off their clothes and threw dust into the air, and they rent their garments, threw dust in the air because they didn't have any rocks. They're like, it's acting like it's throwing rocks at them, but it was just dust. So another riot. With Paul, it was either revival or riot. That's it. Verse 24. And the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle. That's castle. That's like after our high school. Castle's in the Bible. Castle High School's in the Bible. Let's sing the Alma Mater. And bade that he should be examined by scourging, that he might know wherefore they cried so against him. I don't think Farrington's in the Bible. I don't think so. It is then, huh? Okay, move on before we lose. Moving on before we lose it here. Persecution. So the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle because of all the crowd was going berserk, and bade that he should be examined by scourging. Now keep in mind, Apostle Paul is speaking to them in Hebrew. He doesn't understand what's being said, but he's seeing this, they're listening. They're like, they're listening to him. he's a Jew, oh, from Tarsus. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, he learned from Gamaliel, oh, and this, and he's listening. They're all interested, and then they go, rah! And then they get. So when they're watching this, the Roman guards and the captain of the chief captain is thinking, what is going on? So they get Paul, they bring him into the castle, and now they're going to question him. The way they question people, they scourged them. And as they scourged them, they tie them up to this post. Same thing they did to Jesus. And as they're scourging him, they're asking him questions, just like Jesus didn't say anything. He opened not his mouth. But they're going to scourge him, and they're going to try to get information from him. And then the more you get scourged, you say whatever, just so it will stop. So they're getting ready to whip him. And Paul is going to tell them something that's going to send chills up their spines. You're going to scourge me? Is it okay for you to do that, being that I am Roman? You're Roman? And they're probably looking at him. He's all beat up. And no, you can't be Roman. He is. So they're that he should be examined by scourging, that he might know wherefore they cried so against him. Verse 25, and as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? You see, for a Roman to be even bound without due process of the law was illegal. To just have them bound. So they already violated the law by binding Paul when he wasn't condemned. No due process. Innocent till be proven guilty. And for them to beat him without a trial and him being condemned is not just illegal, but it's a crime punishable possibly by death. So you think that they're not afraid now? He probably waited for the last minute, waited for them to at least bind him, so they already did something illegal, and they're about to scourge him. Hey, wait, can I say something? What? What are you going to say? Is it okay for you to do this, being that I'm a Roman citizen? What? So he goes and tells his boss. When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. The chief captain came and said unto him, tell me, art thou a Roman? He said, yeah. And the chief captain answered, with a great sum I obtained this freedom. Obtained I this freedom. And Paul said, but I was freeborn. There's three ways you could become a Roman citizen. First, citizenship could be granted by Roman decree. They could just give it because of something great that you did. Maybe his father or grandfather did something, and so Paul was born a Roman citizen. The second way was it was possible to become a Roman citizen by birth, as the case with Paul. And the last way was you could purchase it. In fact, when Emperor Claudius, him and his wife had that idea that they're gonna allow people to pay money. It was more like you couldn't buy it, but you could bribe it. You could bribe them, and so they'd take this money and they were going to use it for like some vacation or some kind of special thing they're raising money for. So this person paid a lot of money. So that's why he's saying, I paid a lot of money to be a Roman citizen, and you're trying to tell me that, did you have a lot of money? You don't look too rich to me. And then Paul says, I was freeborn. I'm born a Roman citizen. Oh. Then straightway they departed from him, which should have examined him. And the chief captain, he didn't look too bust up, does he? Make sure that he's a Roman citizen. We don't want to get in trouble now. It's our word against his right now. We're still okay. At least we didn't beat him yet. Which should have examined him, and the chief captain also was afraid. Yeah, they were. After he knew that he was a Roman, and because he had bound him, which was illegal, on the morrow, because he would have known the certainty wherefore he was accused of the Jews, he loosed him from his bands, and commanded the chief priests and all their council to appear, and brought Paul down and set him before them. So now he still wants to know what's going on, but he can't do it the way he was wanting to do it, by scourging him. So he says, you know what, I'm going to send him, since he's a Jew, to the chief priest, but he wants to know, hey, I want to find out what's going on though. So he's going to stand before the Sanhedrin, which was the Jewish Supreme Court. And that's where the chapter ends. Conclusion. So Paul had the opportunity to speak to the Jews and to defend his faith. What method does he use? What was his apologist tool, or his apology tool as an apologist? What was it? His testimony. Make sure you got your testimony down. Maybe write it down first. Because you know what? Nobody can argue with your testimony. They cannot say, no, that didn't happen to you. They couldn't tell the blind man, no, you weren't blind. They all knew he was blind. You can't see now. He said, yes, I can. You can test me. Hold up your fingers. 1, 2, 4. They knew he could see now. The woman that at the well, when she told those of her city what Jesus told, they couldn't say, he didn't tell you that. Yes, he did tell me that. Nobody can argue with your testimony. So use it. That's a good tool. What is Paul's purpose? To be a witness to all men of the things that he has seen and heard. You know what? That's our job. Whatever your career is, let's say you're a rocket scientist. I mean, a lot of Castle grads become that, kind of a popular thing. So let's say you're a rocket scientist. If you're a Christian, that's not your main job. That's just to pay the bills, feed the family, provide. But our main job is to be a witness and to tell the things that we have seen and heard. Are we doing that? That's what Jesus did. He came down to this world to reach us, to seek and to save that which was lost. And he died on the cross for us. And you know what he says in John chapter 20? Or no, John chapter 20 something, I forget. 26, I think it says. He says, as the Father has sent me, even so send I you. Yeah, I think John 20, 21. And we need to go out into all the world, as the Bible says, and preach the gospel. And it might cost us. He got beat up at times. People didn't accept what he had to say, but he still did what he could. Let us do the same. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes?
You have been listening to our Truth to Live By podcast, a ministry of Windward Baptist Church. This podcast is supported by the gifts and donations of its listeners. You can make a secure donation through our website at windwardbaptist.org.